Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CDL podcast channel. In this episode today, we're going to be giving our reactions to Major 2 in what was a pretty insane major. The winner, LA Gorillas. I don't know that anyone saw that coming. I don't know if there's a single person besides maybe their families that had them winning the whole tournament in their pick'ems. So we're going to be talking about all the stuff from the major reactions to each team's placement, some of the challengers stuff that went on. Obviously, our first challengers land in a few years since Modern Warfare happened. So we'll be talking about that and kind of our outlook for the CDL as we get into our little mid-season break. But before we get into that, Kyle, how you doing today?
Doing well. We're here on a cold afternoon for me. I don't know where you probably the same where you're at, but it's like we're already in April and it's still I'm looking out the window, it's still snowing right now. So uh disappointing to see the weather, but we had a whole great weekend or kind of a wild week of the second major and stuff. So a lot of stuff to talk about, I think. So I'm ready to dive in.
Yeah, the weather's been horrible. I was telling you before we hopped on the podcast, we got home at like 5 a.m. last night because the weather was so bad at some point we had to pull over on the road on the way back to Wisconsin because we couldn't even see 2 feet in front of us. Uh, and as for the major, yeah, when we got to Sunday, honestly, my friends and I that were there, we were kind of like, this might be a disappointing Sunday because it kind of looked like the meme. Of the dragons where there's like the two strong looking dragons and the stupid looking dragon, except all of them seem like they were the stupid dragons and there was Faze. Uh seemed like Faze was probably about to just run away with that, and we were like, it's probably gonna be like a battle of the other three teams to see who can go take second to Faze. And LAG shut us up. They went out and they honestly steamrolled Faze. They didn't just beat him in the finals, they steamrolled him. Um but kind of along those same lines, obviously, you guys know I was at the major. I didn't tweet a lot during the weekend because honestly, I was just kind of like in the moment, living, hanging out with my friends at the major there, meeting a lot of people, talking to a lot of people. And it was a super fun time. The venue was sick. The challengers venue was really cool to be able to like just go walk over a few feet outside when there was a break in the matches and go hear some people screaming at each other. Uh, so that was super fun. I was pretty impressed. Like when I heard that it was going to a conference room, I was a little skeptical because I was like, I thought we kind of had advanced past those days. Uh, but they made the venue look sick. It was kind of in like almost a little bit of a smaller room, so when people got loud, it almost seemed extra loud because like the noise was just trapped in there. It had nowhere to go. It wasn't like it was like a big basketball arena like some of the other events I've been to. So there's kind of a lot of room for noise to go. It was a pretty packed in room. Uh, Everybody was super loud. It was a really fun event. I mean, I think we can talk about this when we get to Minnesota potentially, but the fans for Minnesota showed that maybe city-based franchising works because they were loud. That was louder than I've ever heard anybody cheer for OpTic. But we can jump into major two storylines if you're ready.
Yeah, if you're giving your boots on the ground analysis of the major, yeah. I just wanted to hear a
Yeah,
little bit about what it was like, but
it
yeah.
was it was a super fun major. I would say like in terms of the three events I've been to, it's up there competing with that Black Ops 4 Champs one. For potentially my favorite event just because of I think when we look back at events, Black Ops 4 Champs will always be a historic one because it was Simp and Abezy's first title. And I think as we get along to the end of their career, we'll be talking about them in the GOAT discussion, most likely. Even a guy like Arcitys, he's got 2 rings. We'll be talking about those guys potentially in the GOAT discussion later in their career. So that's one that'll probably be always looked back at as historic. Especially because we had Slasher, who also made a run this event, go from losers round 1 to grand finals in that event as well. So it's a pretty historic one. But this one, we might be looking back in 10 years and saying it was potentially the biggest upset ever because not only was LAG a team we didn't expect to potentially win, but they also had a substitute player in, so that even probably knocked them down the list more for people. Uh, Starting with our storylines, though, we can talk about the grand finals. That's the big headliner of the tournament. Faze versus LAG. Finals that nobody expected. LAG make the wild losers run from losers round 1 all the way to champs. And the first thing on everybody's mind is kind of that debate between Spartan Gunless for this squad going forward. I kind of have my thoughts, and I have an analogy to a sports reference that I feel like makes a lot of sense, but you can go first on this one.
I'm gonna guess that you're gonna say that Gunless should just come back in. But I'll wait to hear that. But I mean, there definitely is a discussion to be
Yeah.
had so that they won. Um, I think anything less than them hosting that rocker shield, um, I think that you would probably be leaning towards, hey, it was a nice story, but gunless, inconvenient illness with the stomach ulcers and stuff,
Mhm.
obviously probably was not in a fit state to play. Um, but bring him back in. Uh, but I would say that winning a major is winning a major, and it's hard to deny that Smart was just along for the ride. Like he played a pretty pivotal role there. Um, also kind of like introduced a new like meta question mark with the Volk.
Yeah, I think it's G8 already.
Oh, so it was fun while it lasted, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would. I mean, don't know what the. I don't know if there's a right decision. I think it might come down to the other three starters. Like it might come down to Slasher who can ace them. Uh, whatever gives them the best chance going forward. I think that you would have to strongly consider that. Um, and then obviously, taking into account like coach input and stuff. Because there are realities. Obviously Spart is probably on league min. Gunless is probably making more than league minimum. So you kind of have to weigh that. Like, do you really want to bench somebody that's higher paid and stuff? Uh, so I don't know. I mean, I I just think that there is a serious discussion to be had. Um,
Yeah, more than you would have thought coming into the weekend.
yeah, and so I don't know. Interested to hear what your thoughts though.
I mean, I would agree. Spart definitely had to make it a conversation because I don't know how you can't talk about it considering they win the event. He wins MVP. I don't know if I would have given him MVP, but I get the storyline. Like the dude comes in, they couldn't really win many matches. They finished top 12 at last major. He comes in, they win. He plays really well. Uh, so I get that storyline, but I compared it. The first thing I thought of right away was my Colts back in the day in Andrew Luck's rookie year. Their head coach was Chuck Pagano, and he had cancer. I'm not sure what type of cancer. Um, and he was ruled out from coaching for the rest of the year in Andrew Luck's rookie season 2012. The Colts were kind of struggling at the time that he left for his cancer treatment. And Bruce Arians, who was just the recent coach that won the Super Bowl for the Buccaneers, came in, and the Colts went on a pretty crazy run. They ended up making the playoffs with a rookie quarterback going like 10-6 or 11-5. Bruce Arians won Coach of the Year that year for him stepping in. The Colts went like 9-3 with him. Like everybody was like, man, like this is like the coach going forward. But they let Chuck Pagano come back in because PR wise, it's pretty horrible look to have somebody get cancer and then somebody comes in, does their job and does it maybe better than they were doing it, and you just kick him out because it's like, wow, this guy got cancer and then he lost his job because of it. It's kind of a horrible PR look. Now, obviously, a little different situation because it's a different illness and stuff. We don't really want to compare health issues. But if they bench Gunless because he had a health issue, has to sit out, and then they do better without him, not saying it's the correct decision because maybe Spart does fit on this team better, but just PR wise, it looks kind of bad if a guy has an illness and then he loses his spot because of it. So I'm not necessarily judging it based on gameplay. I just think from the optics of everything, it might look pretty bad. And I think it's pretty comparable to that situation with the Colts, where it looks bad PR wise if you bench him. Now, if we're talking gameplay wise, I can see the argument. Although I also think the Gorillas players and organization have kind of an out if they want to because the Volk is getting GA'd. I don't think it's correct. I think that Spart is disgusting. And I think even if the Volk was G8, he would still be very good and be able to help this team win games. But I think they could maybe use that as an out, saying, hey, the Volk's G8, that was kind of his gun. We're going to come back to gunless. And like they have a couple different avenues they can take. I feel like they're going to end up going back to gunless, at least for a little bit. And then maybe if they play 3 or 4 qualifying matches and they're really struggling and they just don't look good, maybe then they bring back Spart. But I feel like they're just not going to allow gunless to lose his spot because he had an illness or sickness. Just bad optics. Not saying I don't think he should potentially lose it, but he just won't because of the optics of it.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I really like the comparison and kind of bringing in like you wouldn't. It's kind of a lose lose situation because or
Yeah,
a potential lose lose because you don't want just optics to be the main focus of
no,
whether something is whether a roster move happens or not. And honestly, like, you're gonna have bad optics either way. If they're like, okay, Spart's gone, people are gonna be like, yo, you just did our guy dirty or something. Like,
Yeah, he just won MVP for
I
you,
mean,
won you an
he,
event.
he got like the acclaim of the crowd chanting MVP. I mean, in my opinion, it probably should have been ASIM, uh, just for like the entire tournament of play. Um, but yeah, I mean, at the same time, you really you can't fault Pierce for having an illness and literally having to miss the tournament. Over like losing blood out of his GI tract and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, and who's to say that LAG won't get an offer to buy out Spart, before the next round of qualifiers? So like, are they even going to have a chance to make the decision of like bringing back Gunless and then like, oh, let's pivot back to Spart if Gunless isn't the answer, or we're just like, we like what Spart's bringing to the table more. So um, it might be something where they have to kind of choose now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, and I still like if I had to place money, and I still would bet that Gunless comes back. Especially because like even when they were like going to finals or like going to losers finals, I don't remember what it was when they were interviewing Slasher. He just kept calling Sparta a fill-in, a fill-in, a fill-in, and then they all talked about Gunless, in their post game interview after the finals. So it just seems like Gunless is gonna come back, and like you can debate that to the end of time if that's the right move, Call of Duty wise. I think a lot of people will probably say keeping Sparta is the right move because I mean, how often is the right move purely from an X's and O's standpoint to bench somebody after you win an event with them? Probably not the correct move, but it'll be interesting to see how this works because I don't know that LAG will sell his contract off right away because I'm sure there'll be some offers. But I don't know if they'll sell it off right away because they might want to see how the team looks with Gunless back in. And we don't even know that Gunless is ready right now. Uh, it's not like he was just like planning to sit out for the major and then instantly come back. He might still be not feeling the best and he might be out for another few weeks. And then maybe they come back, maybe they struggle with Spart, or maybe they keep frying and then it's more of a discussion. But like, I feel like a lot of people are like ready for them to make the decision like tomorrow, but we got to remember, there's a month till the next set of qualifying matches. Uh, Gunless hasn't like put a timetable on when he would like to return. We don't know if it's going to be for the first match of the qualifiers. We don't know if he's planning to return for that Challengers Pro Am LAN. So I feel like we got to give it a little bit of time because it's a really unique situation. It's not like he just subbed in for a player that was healthy just because they wanted to see what the team looked like. Completely different situation. But I think we can move on to your next little segment you wanted to talk about here. Putting
Yeah,
some respect on your guy Asim's name.
yeah. So I mean, take it from the top where the final kill comes through on that Berlin S&D and Asim hops up on his chair.
Yeah.
Uh,
We were
the
right front and center there and we were going crazy.
the pyrotechnics and smoke and stuff are going off. It was just it was kind of surreal. I mean, this guy's been he was on the original Rocker roster for Modern Warfare. Then that squad kind of got scrapped at the end, and went over to subliners. It was clear that he was kind of on the come up there. When subliners had their, I think in Major 3, they made it to the grand finals in Cold War, and he was playing pretty well alongside Clay and Hydra. And did they have Diamond Con then? Was that Diamond Con or?
When they made finals.
Uh, because Diamond Con got subbed out, didn't he? I forget who their fourth was. I'm mentally blanking. I apologize. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I can't remember.
and then he makes this LAG squad. That's everybody kind of has a chip on their shoulder. He's been dropped twice, in the last two titles and stuff. So, um, and he Asim was just coming through with just clutch plays on the map. He kind of has the route man moniker. He's willing to do whatever it takes for the squad to succeed, and he's turning into a better presence of a Slayer on the map too. Like he's picking up like 2 and 3 pieces when he needs to. Like, it felt like every time there was a hill rotation or something, he was on the flank or he was doing something, picking up 2 kills, going untraded. He's a lot of times we'd see Asim just kind of like, he's super fast. He'd fly in and just like, maybe get 1 kill and then just die instantly. But he was playing his life a lot better and still, playing with the team and stuff. So I thought that he, you know, if it came down to like a caster and, personality vote, that Asim might have been more deserving of MVP. But I honestly think that everybody, you could have made a strong case for all 4 of those players to get the individual MVP.
Yeah, and finals MVP is probably Hook. He was absolutely piecing the finals. It seemed like every big situation, he was the one coming through. If you were doing strictly finals MVP, it's probably Slasher or Hook. They were definitely the 2 players making all the plays in the finals. It seemed like in the search and destroy, Slasher couldn't do anything but get a first blood. Like every round, in most of the search and destroy, Slasher was just picking up first bloods after first blood, especially in that desert siege. Spart was as well. Yeah, overall, the team looks crazy. Asim obviously deserves a lot of respect. I've always been a guy that's thought Asim is super good. His role on this team before this event seemed kind of weird because he was more of like the roaming slayer, which we're not used to seeing Asim play. He's always been more of that entry guy, kind of going in first. I think he got a little eager to win the finals at some point, like on that Tuscan control. I think he was just a little eager to get the series over with and get his first win because he had 40 deaths. In that control, he was just holding forward and almost like not even shooting back at points. I think he went like 29 and 40 in that control. Like he was just holding forward. He got a little eager, but he played super well. Hook showed up for the grand finals. He was absolutely piecing. I think what Hook had in the grand finals, I believe he had like a 1.24. Yeah, 1.24. Slasher with a 1.17. Those 2 really showed up in the big moment, like the vets. We'd expect them to show up. But Asim was unreal the whole tournament, making vet plays, hyping his team up. I thought one of the funniest moments was I think it was in the Boston series and losers finals. It could have been in finals. I can't remember. But Slasher made a big play, got like a 1v2 clutch in a search and destroy, and Asim started patting him on the back, like hyping him up. And anybody that knows Slasher knows he's a pretty serious player. He's like known for not smiling in game. Like he's always like business, business, business until they win. Then he'll give a little celebration or something. But even when they win like losers finals, he doesn't really celebrate or anything. And he was like shook. Asim patted him on the back to like hype him up, and he like looked over. He like didn't know how to react. They were such an odd pairing of teammates because Asim is so emotions on his sleeve and like getting hyped all the time. And like he stood up in the middle of the search and destroy and was screaming at Boston in that losers final. And then Slasher's just always so calm, cool, collected, doesn't really show any emotion. Even when they won the tournament, all he really did was like put his hands up, like give his teammates a hug. Like he wasn't like super hyped about it. So they're a weird mash of teammates, but they work really well together. Um, you kind of talked about your guy Asim and putting some respect on his name. I'll let you go first on Slasher because Slasher's my guy and I wanted some respect in his name. I've been saying it for weeks. I
Yeah.
mean, I had that tweet where I said Slasher's been playing better because remember there was that few weeks when Slasher was playing really horrible. And people were calling for him to get dropped. And I was like, calm down. Like, Slasher's an extremely good player. He'll turn it around. He'll be just fine. His teams typically tend to start a little slower. He'll be just fine. And then some guy commented, he's like, he just played Paris. Like, who cares that he did better? And when they made grand finals, I went back to look at that tweet. The guy deleted his tweet. So shout out to that guy. That was pretty funny. I thought that he was talking all this about Slasher, and then the second he made the grand finals, I looked and he had his tweet deleted. So I thought that was funny. But what do you think about Slasher's event?
Yeah, so I kind of made a little comment here that, I started watching live time competitive COD in Modern Warfare, and Slasher was on that Los Angeles OpTic or whatever the hell,
Yeah.
Ogla or whatever the hell they were called. Um and you know, up until now I haven't seen Slasher play that good in the CDL. A lot of people talk about, back to like the Black Ops 4 days or even earlier than that, Slasher back then was, a force to be reckoned with, but kind of felt like, the last 2 years have been a little iffy for, kind of maybe the the aging star moniker or something, like where it's like, oh yeah, he used to be good, but now he's just kind of he's just kind of there because of his name and stuff. But I he was you know he was on it this weekend. That's all. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know you have you have a soft spot in your heart for him, but he was good.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I mean, he's the leader of the team. He was I said to my friend after Cap shot his body, losers finals round 1, I said, "Well, GG. LAG is going to the finals," and we all wanted LAG in the finals because we all kind of thought Boston was going to get smoked 5-0, 5-1 by Faze in the finals. So we were all rooting for LAG to make that finals because we thought, with the momentum they had, they might make it more interesting. Clearly that was the case, but yeah, Cap shot his body in that round 1, and I was like, it's never good. I've always felt like he doesn't get the respect he deserves because, like, yeah, the last couple of years of the CDL, his teams have struggled a little bit. I don't know that he was in the best situations because, like, with OGLA, the whole Dashy and Teej situation where they didn't want to be there and like the team chemistry was just horrible. Last year with LA Thieves, it's like they couldn't get a roster together. Slasher gets randomly benched in the middle of the year. Finally, this year he has a little bit more of a steady team, and then all of a sudden Gunless is sick and can't play. So like it seems like everything was stacked against him, but he was able to get it done in this event. We always see Slasher show up in the big moments. I think it's odd that he has a little bit less respect. Like people always talk about Formal and Clay and even Krim for the times he's been a main AR as like some of the goats, but it's time to start putting Slasher up there. I mean, he's got a champs ring where he was absolutely dominant. He got costed in IW for another champs ring. In the finals, he was like piecing. Like people always talk about Formal's 1.4. I'm pretty sure Slasher had a 1.3 or 1.4 at that event too. He just didn't have Scump, Karma, and Krim backing him up. He had an event where JCap really struggled to back him up. And then you've got the next finals, or not the next finals, I guess, 2 finals later in BO4, where he goes from losers round 1 all the way to the finals of champs and loses to the United team. That was just a buzzsaw that year. So he's been to 3 champs finals, got close to winning 2 of them, kind of got costed at one of them. And now he's the only player to do it twice, where he goes from losers round 1 to winning a finals. Only player to do it twice in COD history. He deserves some respect. Not saying he's the GOAT AR by any means, but he deserves some respect to actually be up there in the conversation because, I mean, he's won a lot of events now. He's had some of the craziest runs. Uh, he's just a reaper through that losers bracket. He said he's the king of the losers bracket. He might be right. I was really hyped to see his performance. I think a lot of people were too. It seemed like a lot of the older pros were like, I can't believe people doubted this guy. I mean, we had a guy sitting behind us saying after what series was that? When LAG got down in one of the series earlier in the day, I think it was against Boston, maybe it's against Florida. Somebody was like, Slasher is so bad because he went like a -5 and a hard point. I was like, my God, people must just turn their brains off when they watch the game. Okay, sorry about that. Looks like we had a little bit of a drop in our connection while we were recording here, but I was just talking about Slasher. He needs some respect on his name. He's now part of a lot of the greatest losers bracket runs of all time. Definitely the best we've seen him play in the CDL era. Wasn't peak Slasher. We've seen him play better than this, which is kind of scary that maybe he has another form he could unlock. But definitely the best we've seen him play in the CDL era. But I think we're ready to move on and talk about Faze a little bit. Falling just short. They fall just short back to back times. Kind of got beat up a little bit in the finals in both majors too. They lose 5-2 in both of them. This one, some maps looked really dominant. Some of the maps were very close. They even dominated the map 1. They took it to Gorillas on that Gavutu map 1, but Faze falling just short again. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you can't really fault them for their entire tournament. I mean, they like and through their qualification matches and stuff too. It's like they play who they play. They always seed out well. And then they find themselves there on Sunday, and I feel like everybody was just expecting like a 5-0 or a 5-1. Like everybody was like, oh, Gorillas have no map pool. FaZe are just gonna run circles around these guys. I mean, when after FaZe won that breach match and Arcitys is like, yeah, like we pulled their pants over their heads or whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, like they're just kind of maybe they turned back and they're just on one now. But then they get to the grand finals and like map 1 just it goes their way. It was almost a 100-point club on Gavutu, I think. And it looked like we might be in for a quick series, but I wasn't expecting it to go the other way. And then as LAG started rattling off maps, it started getting a little bit started getting more and more dominant. Like LAG took that Desert Siege S&D like 6-2 or
Yeah, that
something.
wasn't even close.
Yeah, that was, and people were like, "Oh man, Faze, Desert Siege, good luck." Like Faze are just gonna take this, no questions or whatever. But um, it just seems like they're lacking some Sunday ice or something, or a grand finals ice. I don't really know what to say about it.
Yeah. Also, like, this feels weird and, like, I don't know. There's a lot of Faze haters out there because, I mean, they've been so good for so long that people, like, whenever we see, like, a small crack in the armor, people just love to just hate on them. Uh, but, like, Simp and Abezy, they just, like, this whole weekend weren't normal Simp and Abezy. In the finals, Abezy has a .76. He just looked like he couldn't get comfortable on the map. Simp with a .94. I believe I have the stats, like, the basic stats up here for the tournament. I think they're fully updated. It says Simp had a .93. I wanna know when the last time over an entire event Simp had a negative KD, maybe the first time in his career. It looks like Abezy on the event was at a 1.05, which definitely isn't bad by any means, but in that finals, he struggled a ton. Just looked like he wasn't comfortable. Uh, on the weekend, Arcitys was pretty good with a 1.15, and we know Cellium 1.36. Really, from just sitting there in person watching all these matches in like great detail, because I was really trying to learn some stuff about the game while watching too. Cellium is unkillable. That guy's unreal. I think he's the best player on their team. He's just absolutely unbelievable. I don't even have words to describe how good Cellium actually was, but yeah, like, that was my major takeaway is, like, Simp and Abezy just, like, didn't look as comfortable as normal. Like, granted, they still had, like, pretty good overall, weekends, like, they weren't terrible by any means, like, considering we see Simp had around a .95 and we're like, "This was a terrible weekend for him," that just shows how consistent he's been, like, this is the worst we've seen him play, and he was still around a 1. Uh, but that was, like, my main takeaway from Faze was, like, the Tiny Terrors just weren't as dominant as normal, which is just so weird to see because we never see them struggle.
Yeah, so it's kind of unfamiliar territory.
Yeah,
At
and I don't
least
wanna
for
overreact to it because I feel like they'll
right.
be right back next, major and potentially in grand finals again.
hmm Yeah, but I mean, for me, it's more just like their lack of finishing ability. Uh, they seem to get to they get to Sunday no problem. Like they obviously they're in they come from winners finals. They're like they don't put a foot wrong all weekend, and then all of a sudden, they find themselves down on dropping maps 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, just seemingly out of nowhere. You wouldn't look at that like if you were to replay that grand final like 10 times, I'm not sure if you get the same result. Phase might show up on another
Yeah.
day, but like yeah, Abezy really stunned me. Like it seemed like he was, like especially like the search and destroy, like either he's blooding or he gets blooded and
Yeah.
just becomes a non-factor. Um so I don't know whether it's they need to, go back and rework some strategies or like figure out how to, I know it sounds kind of corny, but like, play more as a team. I'm not exactly sure.
Mhm.
I was more watching the match. I wasn't just staring at the mini map the entire time. But yeah, it seemed a little bit off. And for the second straight major, they kind of find themselves getting bodied in the grand final.
Yeah, it's just it's odd. I don't really know what else I can say about it because, like, I don't think it's, like, a major issue that they're just, like, not gonna have ice. Because I heard, like, a lot of people in the venue because people were against FaZe in the venue, they were saying that they were nervous and stuff. I'm like, I mean, these guys, most of them on the team, 3 of them have 2 rings. They've won COD Champs finals. I don't think they're nervous about a Major 2 final. I don't think the pressure is getting to them. But it was wild to see kind of lacking ice right now maybe. I feel like they're gonna turn it around. I also think maybe, and this is just complete speculation, but I think maybe they came into Sunday with, like, a little bit less intensity than they normally would on a championship Sunday. Because I mean, they've been to so many of them at this point. I saw that Simp and Abezy in their career now have been to, like, 21 tournaments or something, or Faze has been to, like, 21 tournaments since the CDL formed, and they've been in the finals in, like, 16 of 21, which is just absurd. They almost never miss the finals. Granted, like, they may have lost plenty of those finals, like, in the home series and stuff, but, like, the fact that they're in 16 of 21 finals is just stupid. Uh, but I think maybe the intensity wasn't there because like last major, obviously they also lose 5-2, but it was to OpTic, who everybody's saying, at the time is the best team in the game. And we know Faze had that intensity in that game because they always want to beat OpTic. I'm thinking maybe they got to Sunday, they saw Florida, Boston, and LAG with a substitute, and they've dominated Boston, so they're like, that's an easy win. And then they're like, between Florida, Boston, and LAG, they're all going to battle it out, and we're just going to handle whoever. Maybe the intensity wasn't there. I doubt it because those guys are great competitors. So they probably found a way to bring that intensity, but maybe in the back of their mind or something, they were kind of thinking like, well, OpTic isn't here. London was supposed to be the third team. They're not here. Like, what's going on? And maybe the intensity wasn't there, but I'm not really sure. I'm kind of ready to move on to our other teams and talk about them a
Yeah.
little bit, though. So first one, OpTic. Everybody was expecting them to either win this major or obviously come out, be around that top 3 at a minimum because of how great they had looked. They were on pace. They needed 2 more wins at this major. They needed to beat Surge and then likely Faze, is how it was looking, to set the CDL record for most matches won in a row. Like, they were one of the hottest teams we had seen in the CDL era, and then get 3-0'd by Surge. They fall to losers right away. They gain a little momentum, beating Minnesota, beating Thieves. And then honestly, when I looked at their bracket, I saw that they played Florida and then most likely LAG, then potentially like Boston. I was like, Faze, OpTic might be possible again. Like, OpTic might be able to make this run. They didn't have like a crazy bracket on the way there. But then they fall to Florida. Dave Patty going crazy. Dave Patty went crazy. He played really well the whole weekend, but OpTic fall out top 6. You have any thoughts on this, or you think this is a product of Vanguard being just an interesting game? Is this a product of potentially, the CDL just being extremely competitive? Because we saw a lot of our other teams like Ravens, who we thought were potentially top 3, fall out early, and just kind of a weird weekend of results.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think this is due to, one team being on and one team maybe not, coming out of the gates swinging. And OpTic seemed like they were struggling to get into the flow of the matches early. Like they kept, where you think they would, excel, coming out and just stomping an opening hard point, going up 1-0. Instead, even to Thieves, they come out and drop the first 2 maps. They're down 0-2, and then obviously they reverse sweep Thieves and stuff. But I don't know, just thinking a little bit ahead, like, I think it was more due to the competitiveness of the CDL and just having a lot of other good teams, and anybody can beat anybody on a given
Mm-hmm.
day. Like, I think that's more true when you have a game like a Vanguard where sometimes the game can goof you. I don't want to say that's the only reason OpTic lost.
No, it absolutely wasn't.
Yeah, but you know maybe it plays into other teams' hands, or it can easily play into your hands as well. That's just kind of the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I thought the most interesting part about it was like on DeCerto's channel, they were doing football or basketball style post game interviews. So if you guys can check those out, I'd recommend checking them out. They were like 3-minute videos of them interviewing like 2 players in a team, like literally like you would see in a post game press conference for football or basketball, or they're asking them questions. Some of them are really funny. They ask funny questions. Draza was hilarious in his talking about the blackjack table, which ran my pockets this weekend. Actually, the slot machines ran my pockets. I did pretty well on blackjack. But I saw Arcitys say something in one of those interviews, like, they were talking about how Faze, it seems like they're great friends out of the game. The reporter was saying, he's like, yeah, we're great friends out of game. We like to spend a lot of time together. We live in Atlanta, in the same area together. So we're good friends outside the game, but we've learned that with this game specifically, when he was referencing Vanguard, maybe it's best to give each other some space outside the game, not be together all the time, because the game's very frustrating at times. So like sometimes they can kind of get frustrated with each other, and then they don't want to carry that to outside of practice and get frustrated and just like have the relationship suffer. And I think that's something interesting that we could look at for OpTic. I feel like this is just a situation where they just need to reset, because they had that spawn P1 of Gavutu, and it was about 240 to 240, where Shotzi's like kind of like back red tower by P3, and then Scump is like middle tank, and then I think it was Scump middle tank. Somebody was middle tank, and then there was 2 people in P1. So all the players turn their arrows to look towards P4, where you would expect them to spawn in any normal Call of Duty, and they spawn on the other side, shoot OpTic in the back, break the hill, make the play, Scump almost made an insane play, like crawling around the edge to pop that 2-piece and potentially get them back in the game. But Florida clutch up, and that spawn is super frustrating. But definitely didn't just happen only to OpTic. We saw it happen in that Florida LAG match, I believe it was, where Skies spawned in the middle of two people, like randomly at the end of that game on the P1 on Berlin. And it was happening all weekend, just like really random spawns where people would spawn right in front of you. We saw Donnie Temp in his match literally staring at back P3, back docks on Berlin. He was staring at it, watching people spawn. Like they were literally spawning into his red dot. I learned that spot. I'm going to be using that in ranked. But yeah, OpTic finished top 6. I think it's a situation where, Florida was hot. It was just an awkward match. I think OpTic was caught off guard. Unfortunate map 1. I think maybe that spiraled a little bit into the map 2. They get down 2-0. And then, you know what? Sometimes even if you're the better team, because I still think OpTic's a better team than Florida, but sometimes when you're down 2-0, it's just tough to dig yourself out of that hole. It's not like Florida is some slouch team. Like if they have 3 chances to win one map against OpTic to knock them out, like they're going to be able to do it because Florida is not some terrible team that just doesn't deserve to be on the stage with OpTic. They're a solid team with a lot of talent. So I'm ready to move on from OpTic, but it's like, they fall at top 6, expecting them to be right on back towards the top. Tough to say who the best team in the game is right now, though, because we see OpTic fall at top 6 and Faze struggle so much in the finals. So kind of weird that there's no like clear-cut best team in the game.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of chalk any kind of power rankings you have, just given, the amount of obviously substitutes and like the wacky results and how much you value LAN over online. But
Mm-hmm.
like in that I think it was the Thieves match where I was like, look, I think I like tweeted you. I was like looking like my Shotzzy MVP pick was pretty solid because he was like, I just remember that Tuscan. He was
Yeah.
just he was just like everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It's like he'd shoot 2 guys and then disappear. They couldn't trade him out, and then he'd pop up again. And it always seemed like OpTic, like they could have honestly been playing 3v4 because like they always had one more guy that needed to be traded, and like Thieves just couldn't keep track of like who they needed to find.
That Thief series was one of the most dominant 3-2s I've ever seen. OpTic dominated that series, and
Yeah,
they almost should have lost it.
yeah, and I mean, so I think there's still really there's a lot of positives to take away for OpTic. You know, obviously they looked at times like they were gonna find themselves back in the grand final, and then other times they just got caught out. So I think obviously we're not sounding any alarm bells for OpTic. I think we can kind of wrap them up and ship them off to the midseason break. But
I
yeah,
also think like their loss to Surge looks not nearly as bad after we see Surge the rest of the weekend. Surge were in form.
yeah,
Uh,
Surge looked really good. I mean,
and Mac was frying. Even after he threw up, he was frying in that match against FaZe. Like, I think Surge looked a lot better, and we can talk about them in a bit, but I feel like the OpTic loss to Surge, obviously you don't want to lose 3-0, but with how good Surge actually did look, I think it's a little bit less concerning that they lost to them because like coming into the major, Surge looked pretty bad. So them losing, OpTic losing to them was like, ooh, that's a pretty bad blemish. But now when we see how good Surge looked, it's like, okay, maybe it's a little more realistic. You still would expect OpTic to be able to beat them, but Surge did look a lot better. Uh, your next team, though, that we got to talk about, your boys, Minnesota Rocker, finished top 12 at their home major. Kind of unfortunate for them. Granted, Seattle looked really good, so I don't know if they would have beat Seattle if they dropped to the losers bracket, but they definitely weren't expecting to play what we coined as the best team in the game coming in losers round 1. They had to play OpTic. My main takeaway from Rocker, though, is that crowd. Being in the middle of that is the loudest crowd I've heard at a COD event in the 3 I've been at, and it wasn't for OpTic, and people were booing OpTic like crazy. I don't think it's really ever happened where OpTic gets booed like that, and a team has so much more cheers against them, and that was loud. I felt like I was at an NBA basketball game, like in the playoffs last year for the Bucks. It was so loud in there. Like they were going crazy, chanting all kinds of things for their boys. Like I think like the CDL, the biggest winner from the Rocker this weekend wasn't even like the Rocker or anybody. It wasn't OpTic beating them. It was the CDL because they've been talking about how to sell expansion, they want to show these events. I feel like the CDL is just drooling that they can now show that like one of their teams that didn't have any history in Call of Duty in Minnesota of all places, not like a major area, not like a New York City or an LA or anything, has this big of a fan base that like will go crazy for their team against the team that's the most popular that normally has all the fans. Like they were clearly outnumbered. I feel like the CDL is drooling over the fact that they can use this as a promo video for new franchises to potentially get in and show how you can grow a home base. So we talk about how great the Rocker organization is all the time, but I just want to give them a shout out because that was insane. The fans there were going nuts for the Rocker, and there were so many people that like I heard talking and like they weren't huge Call of Duty fans. You know, they casually played. They didn't really play competitive, but like they were supporting them because they were Minnesota team. So Rocker are doing it right. Shout out to them. They're growing organic fan base based on their location, which is something people were skeptical of coming into the CDL. And Rocker showing that it might not be easy, but it's certainly possible. So that was my main takeaway. Not really the team, but how amazing the fans were for their home team.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I can both say with some degree of confidence that the Midwest Great Lakes region, we're no slouches to being
Loyal to their
fan like
teams.
yeah to having a lot of we'll show up and support our professional organizations. Even though we're not like the most major metropolis areas. I mean, say for Chicago. Um, but yeah, I mean, we'll show up and support our guys and our guys and girls and stuff. So um, I think maybe a lot of smaller metropolitan areas like might look into getting into the CDL, or at least getting into esports, I guess
Give me
maybe.
a Milwaukee team.
Yeah, or I mean, just like, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a New York or an LA or a Boston or something, like millions and millions of people. Like you can have like these, quote unquote smaller areas. I mean, I know Minneapolis, St. Paul is like, a pretty large
Yeah.
area in itself, but like, it's not on the tip of your tongue when you think about like, major sports cities or whatever, or
Yeah.
major metropolitan areas. I mean, they have snow on the ground for like 8 months out of the year or something. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, I think maybe touch briefly on Rocker's performance. I mean, not a whole lot to talk about. They dropped the opening hard point as expected, pretty handily on Gavutu. Then they predictably win the Desert Siege S&D.
Hmm.
And then, they lose in game four, drop a round five in the control on Tuscan. I thought maybe on Tuscan they could claw it back. Um, but ultimately they get dispatched by OpTic. They didn't get dominated by any means, at least from like a statistical standpoint. Nobody really had a glaringly bad series, but the Rocker are kind of who we thought they were.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, not a whole lot. I mean, I'm sure in our mid-season podcasts and stuff, we can dive into more of like what we should do about them, or if they should do
Hmm.
anything, or what their problems are. But I think they're playing right to where we think they are right now. So I don't think they really merit much more discussion. But interested to hear if you have anything else to say.
Yeah, I'd agree. They did exactly what we'd expect them to do. They're playing a team that was better than them in Optic, and we know that Rocker's formula for success right now, with how bad they've been in Hardpoint, is to try to win through 2-3-5. They won the search. They were competitive in that control, and they lost both Hardpoints. Kind of like if you were to tell me how an Optic versus Rocker series based on their current form would go, it's exactly how you'd expect it to go. Optic win the hard points pretty handily, lose the search, Rocker take them in that, and then the control is somewhat competitive and Optic takes it. Like that's exactly how you'd expect that series to go. So it wasn't anything crazy. I think it's interesting for the Rocker, and like you said, we'll talk about this more in midseason with if they should make changes. I guess like everybody's been saying Standy's their franchise player, they're not moving him. Same with Attach. And Major Maniac's been pretty unbelievable in clutch situations, and a lot of people like don't think they should move him. A lot of people have been calling for Priesta. I think it's interesting now with the situation with LAG, Spart slash Gunless. One of them can't start. Uh, so maybe they look to Gunless or Spart to replace as the flex for Priesta, because it seems like that's where everybody's going. I don't know what the right decision with this team is, because once again, these are four amazing players that just aren't working. So it's just odd. And now there's a lot of teams in that situation. We'll talk about the few as we get to them, but like we see Surge, like everybody was calling for a roster change, or like maybe a change needed to happen with them. And I strongly believe there's a decent chance that they would have been in the finals if Mac doesn't get sick, because they were looking pretty unbelievable. I don't know that LAG makes the finals if Mac is healthy, because they went to a map 5 with Nikki D Classic, who was just like coming out of, he was literally in the casino. He might have been a few drinks in when he came into that series, like not kidding. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But Rocker, yeah, exactly what we expect in a series against OpTic. I'll be interested to see where they go. Spark Gunless might be on their mind if they're looking to get rid of Priesta, which is what most people are talking about. But kind of super unfortunate for them as a team that they have to play OpTic, but kind of a W for their organization this weekend, because they weren't really expected to do much, but they showed how crazy their fan base is. And I feel like people with watching OpTic there, they probably want to, or not watching OpTic, excuse me, watching Minnesota. Like, this is a place where players might want to play coming into the future if they make roster changes, because of that's the first time we've ever seen a crowd get behind the other team and against OpTic. Like, people probably saw that and they're like, wow, like this crowd was nuts. And they were supporting their old player Asim the whole weekend once Minnesota was eliminated. Like, crowd was nuts. So shout out to Rocker. That's about all I've got for them. I think we can move on to Boston. All right. Boston. I don't know. They, I guess, technically have a pretty good weekend, finishing top 3, making it to winners finals. I kind of have more thoughts on this team, but I kind of want to hear your thoughts on Boston first.
Yeah, I mean, you can't fault a team for beating who's in front of them.
No, you can't.
And winners round 1, they 3-0 LAG. So, of the eventual champions they dispatched of and sent them down to their immaculate losers run. So maybe Boston is the real hero of the major. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think you can take some positives away, but you can also be realistic at the same time and say, like, well, they haven't really played the best teams on land. They haven't beat the best teams. So, um, but I don't think I'm calling for them to be like a consensus top 3 team, but I think a top half team is definitely a
Yeah.
fair assessment. Even though given the massive upsets we had this weekend with OpTic getting out in top 6 and stuff, but like I think that they've shown enough upside through the first half of the season uh to at least have a little bit more respect, and whether they continue to grow and be competitive with the teams in the second half, I guess we'll have to see come May. Uh
Hmm.
but I don't know. I think that they, I mean, by all accounts, they, quote unquote, impressed me this weekend. But I don't know. I know you kind of have a slightly different narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like saying Boston. I still think, like you said, they're a top half of the league team. They're a good team. They'll be in playoffs. They have the potential to pull upsets, but like when I look at their team, Method's at a 1.6 this event. Second, he had a 1.61. The second best KD was Cellium with a 1.36. Like, he was far and away the best player on their team this weekend. And the rest of the players, honestly, like, didn't show up that great. I mean, the next best KD on their team is Cap with a 0.91, then Nero with a 0.9, and TJ with a 0.85. I was talking to my friends going into that Sunday, and I was like, I really don't want Boston in this finals because they're going to get 5-0'd. And they showed that when they got smoked by Faze. Like, I don't know, like, I think they're a good team that can beat other teams that are at their level because they're so fundamentally sound. I think Cap and Nero have high ceilings, but they also have low floors at times. They have some really bad games, but they're also extremely talented. I think Boston is a great search and destroy team, but like when you look at their run, they beat Gorillas with a sub, which I know Gorillas won the event, but this was the first match they played. So I feel like Gorillas weren't really into their rhythm. They were kind of like feeling things out. Then they beat Mutineers 3-2. Go get dominated by Faze and then get 3-2'd by Gorillas. So like, yes, they were very close to the grand finals, but like, granted, they beat Gorillas in their first match with Spart, and then they beat Mutineers, who have been not that impressive this year. Then they lose to Faze and lose to Gorillas again. So they won 2 matches this event. And like, they weren't like crazy impressive matches. Now I know you can make the argument, hey, we said Faze, we're not that worried about them because their Faze, but they only won 2 matches this weekend as well. But that's different because I mean, Faze have a lot better baseline. But I don't know. I'm just like, with this Boston team, I feel confident in them in search, but like their next best KD was a .93 and Zinni dropped to 1.6. Like I just feel like I didn't want them in the finals because like when I looked at LAG and I see Asim and Hook and Slasher and Spart, I feel like those guys are people that if they're hot, I feel like they could slay with Faze. They're probably going to get outslayed, but I feel like they could kind of hang with them. Like we've seen Hook and Asim and Slasher be at the peak of the game at times. And even when you look over at the Florida boys, they were frying. Dave Patty had a 1.34 on the event. And overall, those players, like Skies was frying this event. And like, I just felt like Boston just doesn't have the slaying ceiling to compete with these top teams right now. And maybe that'll pick up. Cause like I said, I think Nero and Cap have a high ceiling. They're just way too inconsistent for me right now. So like Boston finished top 3. I'm not ready to call them a top 3 team. I'm good with like the top 6 narrative. They're a top half of the league team. They're a playoff team. We're gonna find them around probably on a lot of Sundays. They might get a couple more top 4s. I just feel like the inconsistency of Cap and Nero on this team, even TJ. I mean, TJ was 0.85. He was very close to being the lowest KD at this event. So I don't know. Boston, they are impressive to get a top 3 finish. Like you can't fault them for beating who's in front of them, like you said, but I'm not sold that there's some top 3 team because of this finish.
Fair. That's fair. I think that accurately summarizes our thoughts.
Yeah. We can move on, but I'm excited to see what they can do going forward because, like I said, Cap and Nero, especially in Search and Destroy, are extremely talented, and uh, Boston could have that Minnesota recipe for success. I could see them winning a lot of series through 2-3-5 if they can keep improving their control because their control was abysmal before this event, but actually looked pretty decent at this event. So if they can continue to improve that control, and they've actually been a pretty good hardpoint team, like I see the path for them to continue getting top 4. I just don't know that when they face the OpTic and the Faze, uh, that they can slay with them, which is why I'm scared. But overall, a team that's going to consistently be top 6, top 4, I think. Not saying that they're terrible by any means. All right. Mutineers. Make a surprising run to Sunday. Bow out top 4. I'll just go ahead and say it. Dave Patty got costed against LAG. Florida should have won that series against LAG. Dave Patty was deadlifting his team in that map 5. He got costed. He was like 0.1 seconds away from clutching a 1v4. If he hops off the bomb in that 1v1 versus, I believe it was Asim, he probably wins that 5-4 round. And once again, LAG's eliminated. So many moments where LAG could have potentially been eliminated, but they clutched up. But Florida, pretty impressive overall compared to what we've seen. Dave Patty showed that he has superstar potential. What are your thoughts on Florida?
I mean, this is such a, it fits right in with their narrative.
Yeah.
I know that's like a really popular phrase nowadays of like the narrative, but it's like, who is this team? Like, obviously, like they show up this major and like really impress us. They get to Sunday, they look at times untouchable. Dave like seemingly comes out of nowhere. Like, you know, not a whole lot of people like came into the weekend talking about Florida. But then they're right there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, Skies looked good at times
That OpTic
too.
series, he was unreal.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that I don't know what to make of them. It's such a confusing thing for me, like to look at them and be like, what do I expect them to do on a given day? Uh, like I could see them next major, finishing top 12 or something, or easily just as easily being there on Sunday and playing for a top 3 finish or something. So I don't know. You have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they like yes, the top 4 is kind of shocking. Them beating OpTic is kind of shocking, but I feel like the way that they did it was exactly how we'd expect them to do it. Just raw talent, heavy slaying. I will say the upsides I see with them are they should have won that series against LAG because Dave Patty was going crazy. I mean, what did he finish with in that series against LAG in that map 5? They lose around 11. Dave Patty goes 13-4. Has like a 1v2 clutch. Should have clutched a 1v4 if he had .1 more seconds. He would have clutched a 1v4. Hook gets 11 deaths in that map 5. Like Florida should have won this series. It's also the most Florida series of all time when you look at the stats, the overall statistics. Skies 1.18, Awakening 1.19, Dave Patty 1.3, Vivid 0.8. On the side of Gorillas, Slasher and Hook were in the 0.8 territory, Sparts at a 0.9, and Asim's their best KD with a 1.03. So they get heavily outslayed and still win. That's just classic Florida. Completely outslay the team you're playing and still manage to lose. But I don't know. I feel like there was a lot of positives to take away. I've been a pretty negative person on Florida all year, but as opposed to where maybe I'm pumping the brakes on Boston, we did see Florida beat some actual better teams. Obviously, they take out Royal Ravens 3-0, who we were calling the third best team in the game. They're competitive against Boston. They take out OpTic, and then they're very competitive against Gorillas, finishing top 4. I feel like what I liked to see out of them was we knew they couldn't win a series that didn't include Bocage going into the event. But in this tournament, they were very good on Gavutu hardpoint. Like on the more structured maps, they seem to be looking a lot better. Skies was frying. And my big takeaway was I don't think Big Wake played at his best at all at this event. I mean, coming into the event, he had like a 1.22, 1.24 KD. And at the event, he drops a 1.06 and honestly didn't look super comfortable at times. He had a 0.6 in Search and Destroy. I feel like Wake has more to unlock. I think Dave Patty was playing at an MVP level. And I think Skies at times was at an MVP level. I also think Vivid kind of struggled. He dropped exactly a 1, but kind of struggled in hardpoint. I feel like Vivid and Big Wake have another level they could hit. So I could see this team maybe even getting a little better, but I could also see them going back to their inconsistent ways and dropping out. So I still think Florida's kind of in the same spot where they're inconsistent, but I feel like if Dave Patty and Skies can keep up this level of play and Big Wake can get back to what he normally is, I don't know. I have some confidence in this Florida team to potentially be a constant 6 through 8 seed at the majors that has a chance to make some runs and make some noise. They're gonna continue to be that random dark horse team, in my opinion. All right, you want to move on to Royal Ravens? Disappointing weekend for them.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Royal Ravens lose to the team we were just talking about, Florida, in the first round, kind of unexpectedly. They go down, they take care of Legion, and then they lose to the eventual champions, Gorillas 3-0, bow out top 8. Interesting weekend for them. I know Zero says right after that he was feeling terrible. He ended up testing positive for COVID. So unfortunate situation for him. Didn't seem to affect him much on the stage though, because Zero played incredible. What did he finish with on the weekend? He finished. Where is it? Overall, he finished with a 0.96, but he had a 2.07 in Search and Destroy. Like he was carrying them in Search and Destroy. But kind of a disappointing weekend from them. We expected them to potentially make a run, especially when we looked at their bracket that they had, because their half of the bracket included Mutineers, Breach, and Gorillas. And obviously, people weren't high on Gorillas coming into the event. Breach, they're a beatable team. Same with Mutineers. I think everybody expected Royal Ravens to make a run to winners finals, which would have guaranteed them top 3. Obviously, doesn't happen. Quite the interesting weekend. I think you have here that it was disappointing for the second straight LAN. I don't really think that's the case. I feel like at Major 1 finishing top 3, if we're going to say it was somewhat impressive for Boston, we've got to say it's somewhat impressive for Ravens to finish top 3. But yeah, they definitely disappointed at this LAN. That's for sure. I still think they'll be able to bounce back and continue to be a top 6 team. Like I said with Boston, they'll continue to be a top 6 team. Do think Royal Ravens ceiling is higher than Boston. I still feel like I would favor them in most series against any team that isn't like an OpTic or a Faze, but disappointing weekend for them for sure, especially because with the bracket they had, we were all expecting them to easily be able to make a run to winners finals.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It was more just like a shoot moment for me. Maybe that's why like I kind of come in with like the I'm disappointed narrative or storyline here. But yeah, I mean, especially once we saw the tournament unfolding and stuff, it's like, man, if Ravens were just on this weekend, they could have. I mean, I don't want to say easily have been there, but like, you could have made a case that if Ravens had, you know, quote unquote, shown up and played their, close to their best potential, they could have been there in either winners or losers finals or whatever. But yeah, just gotta dust the brush yourself off and pick yourself up and get on to the next one, I guess. Don't dwell too much in the past. Obviously, we know
Yeah.
this team is really capable of being there on a given day. I don't really have a whole lot else to say. Just kind of like, man, I thought they could have been there. I think I did have them in our predictions. I did have Breach beating them, but it
Hmm.
didn't even get to that, I guess. So
No.
yeah, I don't know. I think that this team still, like you said, has clear top six potential.
Yeah.
Um, and just kind of had an off weekend. But I think they'll be just as hungry, and I think Zero
Hmm.
really kind of turning a new leaf here in the last month or two has really been big for them. Uh, and then we all know that the other three guys, Zero, Nasty, and Gizmo sorry, Afro, Nasty, and Gizmo are just they have breakout potential in any map, any given map too.
Always. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this team they have a really high upside. And I think if if LAG can make a run to win a major, I think any other team, and Ravens should always think that they can be there too. So
Yeah.
uh, I'm looking forward to seeing what their second half will look like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling really good about my bold prediction to start the year of 4 different teams winning the 4 majors, with LAG pulling one out. Now all we have to have is just Faze and somebody else win.
Yeah, who would have thought that Faze potentially winning major 3 or 4 would have been just their first, you
Yeah,
know.
especially since they made both finals. But my general thoughts on Ravens too is it's kind of like the OpTic situation. I still think they're a very good team. I still think they're clear top 6. I think what we saw this weekend is maybe more of their floor. Like I don't really see them ever getting first of all, I don't really think that they'll probably ever start in losers unless they get like a absolutely brutal set of qualifying matches and just happen to lose a couple close ones or something. But I think their floor is top 8. I think they're a playoff team. I think they're I think really like this weekend, like Zero, Nasty, Gizmo, especially Gizmo, since he had that hot start in the first set of qualifying matches, I feel like he hasn't played as well. Uh, I don't know, what did Gizmo have on the weekend, KD wise? He was at a 0.93, like, and he was at like almost a 1.3 in the first set of qualifiers. Like Nasty was at a 0.94, Afro was at a 0.95. They're actually all back to back to back right here, and Zero was at a 0.96. So we go 9.3, 9.4, 9.5, 9.6. Team got outslayed this weekend. I feel like the 3 guys that we know have the superstar potential on that team, the 3 young guns, just didn't really have this weekend. I don't know, just an off weekend for them. I feel like they're going to bounce back just fine. Uh, Not really worried about them. I think you'd have to see a lot more to hit a panic button on this team because they've proven time and time again through the beginning of the year that they're a good team. I still think like if I'm seeing them play anybody but OpTic or Faze, I'm most likely picking them to win. Maybe with a little bit more hesitation now, but they're still a good team in my eyes. I'm not ready to worry about them at all. All right. Surge. Make a little mini resurgence here, finish top 6. I'll still say it. I think Surge were going to the finals if Mac doesn't get sick. I think they might have taken out Gorillas in that series. It goes to a map 5 with Nikki D in, who, like I said, might have been off the casino. He might have been at a blackjack table when they called him in because he had lost his challengers. He got knocked out of the challengers event like a couple hours before. So he literally might have been at a blackjack table having some drinks before this. Who knows? They might have had to go find him in the casino. Uh, which I also have a hilarious story about the casino. So remind me after you go on, Surge, with TJ. I have a hilarious story of TJ in the casino. That is just like so on brand with what people think about TJ. It was hilarious. But with Surge, they finished top 6. I feel like they were frying this weekend. I was actually really impressed. I've been calling Mac their best player all season since like Sib and Pred started to have their struggles after the first couple matches. I've been calling Mac their best player. In my opinion, he solidified the fact that he is by far their best player right now. Accuracy was ninja diffusing, clutching random clutches like he always does. Pred was very, very good at times. He had a 1.15. Sib was amazing this weekend. He was back to that classic Sib form that we had seen. He had a 1.17, mostly because he was frying so much in control. Pred with a 1.15, but Pred got to hit the brakes sometime. When they lost to LAG, I believe that was, they were in a 2v3, him and Accuracy. They had control to B bomb like it was a winnable round. And he just sprints at gate, jumps up, and gets picked. There was a lot of times like that. There was a Berlin hardpoint where he was on a 6 streak, one off a glide bomb. It was a big glide bomb to get. There was like 10 seconds left on P2. All he had to do was just go play a credit corner outside, kill a rotator, get your glide bomb, play your streak, and then you get it. And he just goes and chows old time and jumps in, flies in for no reason. There's no reason to do it and dies. Like, hit the brakes a little bit. I think that's just maybe a young player thing for Pred. He's just so into the game that he's just flying, and not thinking about some of the consequences of those actions. But overall, I was super impressed with Seattle and Mac in general. The guy had a 1.35 in hardpoint. I mean, he was frying. He fried Faze on Bocage. But yeah, I feel like Surge showed me again that they have that potential. But once again, won't be shocked if they come out and just lose 4 matches in a row because that's the way they go. But I really like Surge. They showed why this roster probably just needs to stick it out this whole year and hope they can hit their ceiling.
Yeah, I think I guess maybe I wasn't following the you know I guess maybe in terms of like who was gonna make it to the finals, I wasn't like, oh man, like Surge are really looking good or something. But uh yeah, it sucks that Mac had the like health like kind of minor health incident, I guess. Like all of a sudden the map dropped and it it was kind of like, oh man, what happened? And then find out that he got sick. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you look at the, I mean, he was just absolutely a menace in hardpoint this weekend. He led uh the entire league in hardpoint damage per 10 with 3700, almost
Mm-hmm.
3800. His kills per 10 was the highest, I believe, in hardpoint. Uh just absolutely otherworldly. Um and I don't know, I mean, yeah, when you talk about like the rest of the team, obviously like they were just so on brand for what we expect out of them. Like you had Sib kind of, he turned up and played really well. You had Pred, who was just kind of like, you know, like you said, he was maybe a little bit uh too
He was too aggressive at
amateurish.
times.
Yeah, I guess just kind of learning to pump the brakes and uh think more big picture, and then accuracy, just doing accuracy things, hopping on bombs with like 3 players still up or something.
Yeah,
Um but yeah, I think that they definitely they had their quote unquote resurgence, I guess. And they place decently well. Top 6, I think, is pretty really respectable for this team, given that they've shown a lot of peaks and valleys. Hoping that they can kind of even out so we can get a better read on if this team is really legit or whatever. But I think that all the pieces are there. It's just they're still a work in progress. So
for
um,
sure.
I
They're a
think
team that's
they're
building to try to make a champs run.
yeah, exactly. And I think they're going to be really exciting to watch in the second half. Just to see if they can iron out some of those some of their greenness and maybe make some more runs here.
For sure. Before we move on to Thieves, I gotta tell this. Speaking of Thieves, I gotta tell this TJ story before I forget. In the casino, one of the first nights we were there, me and a couple of my buddies, we hit a blackjack table. We actually were kind of chilling, playing at one of the blackjack tables with the Thieves boys. Octane wasn't there until the end, but it was like Kenny, Envoy, JCap, and then Draza was there for a little bit. We were like playing blackjack. One of my friends was at the table. We were chilling there, which is really cool for me because you guys all know uh, that Kenny is like my favorite player in the league. So that was kind of cool for me, just getting to talk to those guys a little bit, hang out in the casino. It was kind of weird, like in the casino all night, you'd like randomly bump into pros because they were all walking around. But this TJ story was hilarious. We were at one of the slot machines, and this casino was kind of confusing. It was like my first time really in it, and it's like kind of confusing. It's pretty like narrow at a lot of the areas, so it's kind of hard to see where you're going and kind of hard to get back to the hotel lobby. And we were at a slot machine. We see TJ like walk by us, and he goes, "How do I get out of here?" Like, the classic T, just kind of like known for just like being like the brainiac in game, and then everybody just makes fun of him out of game because he's just like a hilarious dude. And he's like, "How do I get out of here?" He like couldn't figure out how to get out of the casino. And like 10 minutes later, he walks back by the same slot machine. He's like, "Dude, I can't make it out of here." And he like goes up to one of the blackjack tables and asks the dealer like, "How do I get back to the hotel?" And I thought it was just hilarious because like TJ literally was lost, and then he posted like some meme about like me going to the casino again. It was like a dude walking around lost. Like I just thought that was hilarious because TJ literally was like, I don't know if he's going to make it on time for his match because the guy couldn't make it back to the hotel. So I thought that was absolutely hilarious. But that was one of the coolest parts about the event, by the way, was the fact that you just go down to the casino and you could just hop on a blackjack table with some of the pros. Granted, I wanted to hop on the table with Doug, but he was at like $100 minimum hand table, so I wasn't doing that. But it was kind of cool how you could just sit on a slot machine, sitting down next to like one of the slot machines. At some point, we sat down. We were right next to Cellium. They were playing. It's just kind of cool, just talking to random pros as you're walking around, random coaches, random talent. But I thought that TJ story was hilarious. But we can move on to Thieves. They about won losers round 2. Actually looked like they were going to beat OpTic for a second there. They were up 2-0. OpTic comes through with the reverse sweep, but I don't know. I feel like Thieves once again kind of flashed their potential. They actually started to pick it up in search and destroy a little bit, and like started to finally look like somewhat of a competent team in that mode. Still weren't like great by any means, but like they actually like showed some form of promise that they can maybe win a search or two. Obviously, bow out to OpTic, top 8. I was, like I said, somewhat impressed. I feel like this team just solidified the fact that they're not going to make a roster change, in my opinion. I don't know if I feel like they should or shouldn't, but I feel like they solidified that they're not going to because they had flashes.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe I was a little bit too hot takey in our DMs. I was like, oh man, like nobody but Envoy is safe, and then kind of cooler heads prevail. And I'm like, yeah, well, this team, they still have so much like unrecognized potential, and it's just like I think that they saw what they could get to or the potential that they had in Major 1, and then it just kind of all like, whatever, for whatever reason, they just hit a major snag this in this major, in Major 2 and stuff. Like they were obviously 0-5 in their quality matches, like just like they couldn't buy a win. Um but yeah, I mean, you're right. They did show flashes. They showed that they have some upside, I guess. Even though, at times you could say that certain people were just like, if there was going to be a roster change, you're like, oh yeah, that's going to be the guy. Or, you could say like, Draws has got to go, or Octane, move Kenny to main and Octane will, and Octane is benched or whatever. But I think that they should give it another go. Um, they've bought themselves, I guess. I mean, they didn't do themselves any favors this major by going 0-5, but like they still have some capital to play with CDL points and qualifying for champs and stuff. Um, and I'm pretty confident that they can get back to being a solid top 6 team, and on their day maybe making a big run. So another team that I think a lot of people will be looking at for the second half of the season.
Yeah, and I feel like I have a little bit of an interesting take on this, and I want people to listen carefully when I say this, because it's not my opinion, but I think what the facts of the situation are, and I know I feel like you'll probably agree with this. I think that the least safe person on Thieves, because I think roster change is still on their radar. Like I think they're gonna stick with this team at least for the beginning of Major 3, especially because of the names that are on it. Like on paper, this is like a top 3 team. We'd expect them to be right up there with Faze and OpTic because of the names on paper. But obviously, it hasn't worked out that way. And I think the least safe person on this team is Draza. Not because of my own opinion. It probably should be Octane at this point because of how poor he's played. But I'm saying what I think the reality of the situation is I think Draza is probably still the least safe because if you look at the history of this organization, Octane was like their poster child in Black Ops 4. He was their MVP multiple times. They finally got him back. I feel like they're not just going to cut ties with him halfway into one season with him. So I feel like he's kind of safe. Not saying I think he should be, but I think he is pretty safe. Kenny, they've already said multiple times they paid him this offseason. He was potentially maybe going to go to OpTic. They paid him because they view him as their franchise player long term. They want to build around him like an OpTic does with Scump. So I think unless Kenny literally is dropping point twos, he's pretty safe. And then Envoy has really been their best player this year, and he's kind of another guy that, like, with branding, you can kind of build around. And we know Nate Shot, that's going to be important to him. Like Hecz, that's going to be important to have those guys like Kenny and Envoy with the personality, and Envoy has been their best player. And now Draza also has that personality. You could build around him personality wise, but he's the least known player of the three. Like Octane has a history with the organization. They've already announced basically that Kenny's their franchise player, and Envoy's been their best player this year. And he's also like another franchise building block in terms of personality and gameplay. So Draza's kind of the odd guy out because he doesn't have that history. I'm not saying it's fair or that he should be, but I feel like he would probably end up drawing the short straw if they were to make a change. I feel like you might agree with that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you've hit all my points pretty well. Which makes me more firmly in the camp that I don't want them to make a change because
Yeah.
I really stand for Draza. Um, and he's become, obviously he's really proving that he does have a personality. Obviously, like, uh it seems like he gets along really well with the rest of the team. The team likes him. Um and he's proven that he belongs in the league. Even after people were like, "Oh, he was just brought in with that Ogla squad and Modern Warfare," and you know, then he got kind of shuffled around in Cold War. But I think he's really kind of like picking himself up by the bootstraps and making a name for
Hmm.
himself.
He's a
But
great
yeah,
player.
you hit all the points that I would have made for making the case. So um, yeah, keep the squad together and
Yeah.
just figure this shit out.
I mean, like he's a great player, but there's some situations where it's bigger than just X's and O's on the map. It's like OpTic with Scump and Formal. Like Formal was struggling last year, but like you knew they weren't going to drop him because he's safe on the team. It's just like at some points people develop such a brand and affinity with the team that they're just not going to get dropped. Like even if Scump was dropping point sixes, the reality of the situation is Scump is not getting dropped because of his history. Now, granted, nobody on this Thieves team has that like Scump level of not being able to get dropped because of the brand and everything, but like these guys are established with 100 Thieves, and Draza might just be unlucky if they end up making a chance. But I agree with you. I don't want to see them uh, make a change or anything because I still feel like that potential is there. And like, I feel like if this team is to switch their roster, it has to be a clear cut upgrade, like 100%. This is going to work because the players in this team are so good that like even if they're not able to do it next year, I could see or this year. I'm sorry. I could see this team easily just like going into a new year and be the best team in the game with the talent level. If it's a game that suits them more. So like, yeah, just pump the brakes a little bit. They'll be fine. I've been saying that the whole time that they were 0-5. I was still picking them in some matches because I was just like, I'm not that worried. This team has crazy talent. Getting to our last two teams though, before we probably get pretty close to wrapping up the pod. Uh, Ultra struggles continue. Top 12 finish. Just a really horrible overall stage two for Ultra. Opposite of last year's stage two, where they obviously win it all. But man, they just can't seem to find their footing. This stage two, it was always a struggle. Like one player was getting COVID, the next player was getting COVID, somebody was sick. They were losing tight matches. Like just an overall, like I feel bad for the Ultra Boys because I feel like this had to just be a super frustrating just entire stage for them. Bant with a 0.86 at the event, Kleenex 0.92, Cammy 0.86, and then Insight, I'm assuming is somewhere up here. Yeah, with exactly a 1.0. Just overall, they got beat down a little bit in their one series. Obviously, it's only one series, so stats are a little different. They lose to Gorillas, which looked a little bit worse at the time because, it was like, wow, they lost to a substitute player, and then obviously Gorillas go on to win the entire event, so maybe it doesn't look as bad, but man, Ultra still can't win a hard point. Like this team makes me sad. I'll be honest because I know how good they can be. But like, man, they just look hopeless and hard point, and uh, I'm starting to lose faith that they can turn it around. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to be shocked if they come out and go 4-1 the next qualifiers and make a run to top three. Like, we know what this team's capable of. It's just they're in a tough spot right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think that maybe given like their history of like teamwork and stuff, and just having uh just kind of that mentality around their team. Maybe you just like write off the entire stage as just kind of like, nothing was going our way. We'll just, we'll figure it out during the midseason break and then kind of come back for the second half and kind of forget that stage 2 ever happened. Um but at the same time, that's stuff that they got to decide to do on the, inside the ropes, so to speak, like it's stuff that we're not going to be, you know, privy to as, fans and stuff. So, um, but yeah, I mean, it's hard to overlook how, how poor they played, just in as a whole. Just looks like they couldn't figure it out,
Mainly in
whether it
hardpoint.
was,
They're still
yeah,
great in search.
yeah, exactly. And maybe the hardpoint struggles started last major too, like when when they made it
Yeah.
to Sunday without having, or they made it to
Yeah, Sunday.
Saturday. Oh, Sunday.
I think they finished 4th.
Yeah. They finished T4 without winning a single hard point. So maybe we should have been like a little bit more alarmed then, but I think people were just more like laughing at that
Yeah.
time. But yeah, I think that assessment is fair that you know, maybe there's a more deep-seated issue with how they're playing the game or something, but they need to figure that out. And my vote would be just to kind of write it off as being like a lost stage, and
Mhm.
just come back for stage 3 and uh, hopefully having righted the ship to some degree.
Yeah. I mean, it's brutal for them. I think that like you said, I think when we talked about them post Major 1, it was like, "Hey, this could go one of 2 ways. Either it was just a bad weekend of hardpoint and they might come out and fry and be one of the best teams because they'll turn their hardpoint around. They were already so good at control and search, finishing top 4 without winning a hardpoint, or the struggles are gonna continue and they're not gonna be able to keep up this dominance in 2-3-5." And then the latter happened. The hardpoint struggles continue. They're still good in search and control, but they weren't able to just win every single one because you can't really expect them uh, to continue to win every series without being able to win map 1 or 4. Uh, Something else that makes this more interesting, in my opinion, is Ultra Academy. Uh, I think we have to mention Challengers players getting called up because, well, hello, one just got called up for this event and won MVP and won the event on short notice. An Ultra Academy NA team finishes first at the Challengers LAN. Their EU team finishes third at the Challengers LAN. They both qualify. So they have no shortage of potential players that they could call up because their actual sub, Hecz, wins the Challengers event. And we've already seen him sub in for one match when Cammy was sick earlier in the year. So they've got Hecz, Vickle, Mohawk, Scrappy, Harry, Vortex, Beans, and Furious, all who finished either T1 or T3 at the Challengers LAN. So that makes the situation a lot more interesting. The fact that they pretty much have 8 players on deck that they technically could like pick up and sub in. Obviously, the only one that could sub in instantly is Hecz because I don't know how the contracts work. I guess technically since they're Ultra Academy, they probably have the rights to them and stuff. But I don't know if they're all signed to official CDL contracts besides Hecz. Um, but like I don't know. It makes the situation a lot more interesting. I would like to see them stick it out for like a little bit, like you said too. But it'll be interesting to see if they make a change pretty quick if the struggles continue because they have 8 players on deck ready to go that just proved on LAN that they're at the top of the game of challengers.
Yeah, kind of shades of Modern Warfare where they had a 10-man roster and we're just kind of playing musical slots at that.
Yeah,
And then eventually found a team that worked for them. And yeah, so I don't know. It should be, like you said, I mean, something to keep your eye on. But I think both of us are kind of in the camp to at least see if they can fix the issues that are currently at hand. And then if not, you know, like we said, they have a lot of people they could turn to and kind of plug and chug.
yeah. All right. Our last team from the major. We've been going for a while, but we always do that for our post major reactions because it's fun to talk about all these teams. Last team, though, Legion, finished top 12, like our other few teams we just talked about. Uh, Once again, disappointing weekend for them. I actually thought once London falls down, they may have a decent chance to maybe make a little bit of a run. Uh, because London looked so bad that I was like, maybe this is just one of those weekends for London where they just struggle, and Legion are able to make a little bit of a run. Uh, I thought, I mean, by a little bit of a run I made, maybe winning a match, maybe 2 at the most. I also thought that they were going to play Mutineers, and I didn't have a lot of confidence in Mutineers coming into this event. So I actually thought Legion were potentially going to beat Mutineers. And then maybe Gorillas with the sub would be a win that they could do. Once again, obviously that didn't age well, but the story for Paris was relatively the same. I mean, it was Donnie Temp looking like an MVP once again. He drops what in that series a 1.25. Also, Jimbo came out of nowhere. He actually played pretty well overall. He fried in the control, had a 1.08. John went big time, I believe, in that search and destroy. And overall, Paris actually didn't look too bad. Really, it was Jimbo stepping up that made them look a lot more competitive in this one, but they lose it 3-1. Kind of the same story for Paris as it's been all year. Like I said, Donnie Temp frying, rest of the team only showing flashes and not being consistent enough.
Yeah, I think that, like I think my thing was like they just kind of dead ended into 12th, like, kind of nowhere to go, starting in losers. Um, I don't know. I guess maybe there's a longer discussion to be had about like, even if another roster change would help them, like because obviously like we see these players kind of individually step up at different times.
They
But
outslayed London, by the way.
it's just the matter of like putting it together. Yeah, they did. And Gravity didn't look too bad either.
Nah, he played pretty well.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, I think it comes down to more of like, if coaching analyzes it and says like, hey, like, this player X player or whatever is not doing it the right way or how we want it to, like maybe you try and fix it that way, or you go and say that we need to pick up another player. I don't know what the answer is for this team, and it just seems kind of like they're always going to be fighting an uphill battle, especially with not qualifying well. So yeah.
And like it's also tough because like we could easily say like, hey, maybe this player needs to go on Paris, this player needs to go, but like you have to look at context. Like, yes, technically maybe like they could replace Jimbo or John or something. And I know in the past I've said replace Jimbo, but like their alternatives probably aren't that much better because we know like there are potentially better players out there, but is Paris going to spend on those players? Probably not. And like that's the thing with like when I'm looking at this series too. Like this was tight maps. Like they lose 250 to 198 in the map one, and the slaying was pretty much even. They actually might have outslayed them slightly. It was like right around even. Then the search and destroy. John gets 10 kills. They lose 6-4, tight map. They win the control, and then they lose 250 to 248 on Tuscan, another really tight map. Like this was a very winnable series. Like they could have won really 2-3-4. They could have won all of them. They were all tight maps. It's like they're right on the edge there, and like they're so competitive in every series they play that it's hard to imagine them making a roster change. Because on a normal team, you'd be like, yeah, time for a roster change. But with Paris, like they're just going to pick up some another random challengers player that might not even be a top player because he's willing to take a minimum salary. Like
Hmm.
it's hard to say that they should make a roster change because of that. Like I still do feel like this team is very close to being a team that could compete for that top 8 and make a run at like getting to champs. And I think you'd probably agree with that because of how good Temp has looked and how steady Gravity's looked as a main AR. Like if they made the right roster changes and actually were willing to pay to pick up players, like this team would have potential to fight for that 8th spot. Because right now they're putting up a decent argument to being competitive. Like every series they play is a map 5, they get reverse swept, or they play 4 maps, but they're all really close maps, like this series was against. London may have struggled, but London's a good team. And like Paris played them very tight. It's like if they would just make the correct roster changes and like do the correct thing, I feel like they could fight for that 8th spot. But we just know they're not willing to. So at this point, I'm almost like just stick it out with this roster and see what happens because it doesn't make sense to make another change and just pick up some random like middle of the pack challengers player because like what does that really do for you? If you're going to make a move, you got to pick a top end player up, and they're not going to do that. So at this point, I'm like, you know what? You've been super competitive. Stick it out with this roster, and maybe see if you can find a way to potentially go like 2-3 in the qualifiers and get an 8 seed and get winners like some of these teams have been doing. Because 2-3 is almost good enough to get you into winners like every time. It seems like. So I don't know. I guess stick it out with this team, but it's making me very sad to continually see Donnie Temp put up MVP caliber performances and just get costed and not win any series. And it's got to be frustrating for him. Like the guy is literally putting up MVP numbers. He's one of the top KDs in the league and absolutely just frying. And it's like, well, another heartbreaking loss, another heartbreaking loss. So the fact that he hasn't like completely lost full yet this year is props to him because Donnie of old would have already been checked out and started playing worse. So shout out to Donnie. I hope, if nothing else, for this Paris Legion team, his performances this year land him on a better team next year, and he rejuvenates his spot in the CDL because I think we've all seen through his personality he's a great personality. So I'm proud of his progression as a player. And I'm also proud of Jimbo because I was talking down on his name. Everybody's talking down on his name, and he played pretty well. So shout out to Jimbo for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, what's the potential that we're in the liberate Donnie Temp field where it's like, or in that camp where maybe a
And
team
with
comes
Paris,
in
they
and
might do it.
buys them
Oh my
out.
God, we can get some money.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you just slightly overpay what his contract is worth or something, or his buyout clause, and uh, obviously that Donnie Temp has shown that he's an A tier player in Vanguard. Um, maybe even S tier if you take out the Paris Legion aspect of it. Maybe he could
Mm-hmm.
be doing even better. Um, but maybe one of these like mid tier teams is desperate for what he can bring to their team, and I don't know, just something to think about.
Yeah, I agree. And normally you'd be like, nah, this team's going to keep Donnie and build around for next year. But with Paris, you never know. They might see the opportunity to make some money off a contract, and they might just sell out because they seem very money conscious at all times. But we can move on from our reaction to the pro teams and maybe do a little bit of a quick challengers reaction before we wrap up.
Yeah.
All right, so I actually watched more challenges this weekend than I have in a long time because the one match I wasn't in the venue. Like, I mean, I was in the venue, but not in the actual like main stage for. Was the Subliners Thieves, which is disappointing because that match ended up being pretty incredible. I caught the end of the map 4 in the actual main stage, and I caught the entire map 5. But like the first few maps, I was like, you know what? I thought Thieves were honestly going to get smoked because I was pretty high on Subliners coming into this event, and that series ended up being great. But I sent you a picture. I was in the challengers room directly behind Doug's monitor, watching him get knocked out, top 48, unfortunately. But I was like, screw it. Doug's playing, and he was playing against some players Godarex and Pander.
Is
To
that, is that still the Built by Gamers?
No, they're on a team called Furious Steel, I
Oh,
believe. They were playing with Fame, who I'm pretty sure is a college COD player, and he was disgusting this weekend. And somebody else that I'm blanking on right now, but somebody that I know. Um, Can't think of who it is, but they're playing with somebody else. Like, it was a pretty known team. This was actually not to get knocked out. This one was to get sent to losers because they got knocked out by, like, I believe a team that was mostly players from Mexico. I thought it was. That could be completely wrong though. Don't quote me on that. I thought they were potentially from Mexico. It was like people that nobody had ever heard of. They were a low seed and they knocked Doug's team out. But I was watching Doug in winners bracket against Godarex and Pander. Super close series. It was fun to watch. But the Challengers LAN was like really, really, really fun. Like you go in there and like I was just smiling ear to ear, like so happy walking around watching the matches with like two of my buddies who are also like been watching competitive COD since like BO2, and like it was like, man, this is like what Call of Duty is. Like you're walking in there, you are hearing people scream. First thing I heard, second I walked in there, is some guy screaming, "Why are you challenging me? You're awful." And I was like, "Oh, let's go. This is Call of Duty. Uh, this is what it was back in the day. Everybody screaming at each other, just like talking so much trash." So like the Challengers event was super cool. But the results, Kyle, they were kind of shocking, huh? Uh, we
yeah,
saw,
yeah. I mean, they definitely were. Obviously, the Texas Nation squad fails to qualify. So does the Rocker Academy, the EU Spanish God squad.
yeah, the
Um,
Heretic Squad for
yeah.
people that
So
remember him from that.
right. So I don't know, kind of, I didn't really get it. I didn't really watch any challengers this weekend just because obviously CDL was on and
Mhm.
just had other stuff going on here like outside of watching Call of Duty as well. So uh kind of unfortunate that it had to go on at the exact same time. So it's like either you have two screens pulled up and you're trying to watch two matches or something, or um, whatever. But yeah, just my thought was like, should this, obviously we saw the Heretics squad and Texas Nation be, all super dominant in the online elite series and stuff. They've won like, what is it, like 6 or 7 of the tournaments or whatever that have been put on.
7 in a row, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure on the exact number, but and then they don't perform to the standard, of qualifying. They don't perform to the top 4 of what the, to qualify for the Pro Am LAN. So my question was like, should that have been the sole determinant factor for qualifying? Like, should you have taken into account like
Mhm.
the previous performances to some degree? Obviously, like you have to, if there's a LAN, you kind of have to value that as well. And we saw that it was just announced, I think today or late last night, that the Ultra Major 3 LAN will also have a Challengers LAN as well.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
love to see that.
Mhm.
But yeah, kind of unfortunate for Texas Nation and the Heretics Rocker Academy guys, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I specifically feel bad for Texas Nation because they had won 7 events in a row, which online or LAN, either way, it's very impressive, uh, whatever way you cut it. And it's not like they just, like, played terrible at this event. I mean, they were in winners bracket playing for a top 4 spot from winners, so, like, they weren't terrible, but I just feel so bad for, General, Brezzy, Havoc, Kismet, because they were so dominant, and they're all players, like, we know General has kind of been a guy that's had unfortunate circumstances his whole career because, like, his organization, Enigma 6, put on by his parents, I believe, like, his mom and his stepdad, were, like, the funders of the organization because, like, he didn't get on a team. He ends up like dominating for a little bit there. Like in AW, they play really well. Like they're like the first team to go from open bracket to finishing like top 4 at an event, and like his teams always play really well despite like nobody ever believing in them. Obviously, we've seen Kismet in the league. Brezzy finished top 4 at Champs and BO4 with General and Kismet on Enigma 6, and we've seen Havoc. I guess the guy that I'm most interested with that team is Havoc. I don't know if Havoc ever gets a spot in the league again. Um, After this performance, that might be an overreaction, but the guy was. I saw a picture. He was on the Florida. I completely forgot, but he was announced as a starter on Florida this year. The original announced roster was Dave Patty, Skies, Awakening, and Havoc. Um, that was the original announced starting roster for this season. And then obviously Havoc, I don't know what exactly happens. Like they pick up Vivid to replace him. Like I think he kind of chose to like get dropped, not play with that team. Work his way back to the league through challengers. So he works his way back, gets that call up from NYSL, and he says, "No, thank you. I'll take my chances with my team." He bets on himself, and the bet kind of fails because they finish top 6 and they don't get to go show what they can do at the Pro Am LAN. So I don't know. Especially with Havoc being an older player, we know the stigma that is typically around older players. People usually want to pick up the 18, 19-year-olds because they're untapped and we haven't seen what their ceiling is, as opposed to potentially maybe we know what the older players' ceiling is. So I feel bad for them. But the 4 teams that did qualify were the M7/Electrify squad, which was Denza, Wardy, Wee Man, Maple. A couple names specifically we know in there. Wee Man and Maple have been around for a very long time. Have played at multiple champs and have been good EU players for a while. Ultra Academy NA was the winner of the event. Hixie, Vickle, Mohawk, and Scrappy. Then the Ultra Academy EU with Harry, Vortex, Beans, and Furious. They finished 3rd. That Wee Man team finished 2nd. And the 4th place team, Silly, out of nowhere. Fire 40 from Paris Legion last year. Ramby and Gunsy. Gunsy, a legend in the college Call of Duty scene. So I love to see that with the work I've done with them. So kind of crazy. That Silly qualifies with like a pickup team, and Fire 40 is going to be back, maybe piecing up some teams. Maybe he'll beat Paris for his revenge arc. Also kind of wild. Like a lot of these players, a majority of them are EU. So EU challengers kind of showing out.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see if any of them can hold a candle in the Pro Am LAN. I think it's like you get 3. There's like 4 groups, and you get one
Yeah, I think it'll be
challengers
like
team per
a
group
throwback
or
tournament.
something. So it'll be interesting to see if any of them can maybe upend one of our lower tier teams. And certainly it'll be a big fire lighting under the pants of a lot of the pro teams if they go down like 0-2 or something to a a quote unquote amateur team or something. So
Mhm.
um, I'm I think every time we talk about it, I'm shocked that Activision and the CDL actually are allowing this to happen, but it's great. Um,
Fantastic. We should see more of it.
yeah, I mean, for us as spectators, I think yeah, give us all of it. But still, I mean, you have teams that we always hear like, oh, $25 million buy-in, and you're letting unpaid amateurs and stuff come in and play, like whatever. Um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that during this mid-season break.
Yeah, it's potentially going to be my favorite one to watch because, like you said, I don't know if they technically announced the format yet, but it might be like 4 pools of 4, um, with one amateur team going in each pool, and then like you then from the pools kind of feed out into a winners bracket. So like if it's like that, it's like the old school events. It's going to be amazing. Hope it's like that. Hope it's all double elim, uh, not like some single elim BS because I want it to be fully like a old school event where like your top so many teams go into winners bracket and then your bottom few teams go into a losers bracket, with pool play and like, oh man, I could talk about it forever, but I really hope that that's what it is. Uh, Something else I thought that was interesting was the classic EU versus NA debate was going on Twitter, and I had a couple thoughts on it. Obviously, the EU guys are going to be passionate. They're going to be super hyped that a lot of the EU players make it. Because why not? They've been talking their trash that EU Challengers is better than NA forever, and it was proved this weekend, I guess. At this event, at least, that the EU Challengers players were superior because a lot more of them qualified than NA players. The one thing I'll say about it is I also think it's obviously people are passionate. I'm not super invested into either scene in Challenger, so I feel like I'm more of a neutral party. Um, Obviously from NA, so maybe there's a little bias there, but I will say that there are 48 players in the league, and probably like 40 of them, around 40, maybe a little less, because I guess there's like a full EU team in um, London and in Toronto, so that's already 8. And then you've got guys like Pred. I feel like there's at least one more other non NA player that I just can't think of off the top of my head, but there's at least 9 with Pred, um, around the league. So like, I feel like there's also a much bigger pool of top talent that's left in challengers in the EU because there's 9 or 10 EU players in the league and almost 40 NA players. So I feel like a lot of the top NA players are already in the league, and like you've got like player 10 who's sitting over in Europe still playing challengers, like the top level players. So I feel like that might make a difference. Because you've got 40 players roughly from NA in the actual league, and maybe only like 10-ish from EU. So I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying, but like there's so many more players already in the pro league that aren't playing challenger. So maybe that's a reason that EU also seems to dominate, is because they have so much more talent to pick from, because there's so many more players in that league. But uh, kind of a interesting situation with the EU players, but shout out to them because they talk their trash like they're the better challenger seed, and you know what? I don't think anybody can argue with them after uh, they go ahead and prove it here. And most majority of the players that qualify are EU.
Yeah, I mean, especially for the I think a lot of people were aiming for this challengers land thing, but we just saw that Major 3, obviously, like I said, is going to have another land. So I think it gives a lot of teams more to look forward to than just playing, online elites and stuff. They can get back to, if they're able to get to Toronto and play, they'll have another chance to, show out, and hopefully some of these teams can have some redemption, get Doug back there, uh, get Texas Nation and the Rocker Academy guys back for some vengeance, I guess. But EU looking strong.
Yeah, and you love to see it because I think the league's only going to get better as we continue to get more EU players. Because they get a lot of fans behind them. Like the London and Toronto boys have so many fans behind them, and it makes for a good rivalry. Instead of everybody just liking OpTic or liking the NA teams, and the EU teams have proven, obviously, like back in the day, way back, like BO2 and stuff, the EU teams just like couldn't hang when they played NA. Like even NW3 days, it was kind of like a meme that NA was so much better, and EU certainly caught up. Obviously, at this point, like we saw Toronto be clear cut second best team in the league last year with the full EU roster. London has looked very good this year, so I'm all for, even as an NA person, I'm all for EU continuing to get better and better, because you know what? it kind of creates a fun little rivalry of people wanting to support their EU brothers versus people that want to support their NA boys. So shout out to all those players that qualified. Super excited to see that land. I don't know. We talked about should it be the sole deciding factor to qualify. I don't know. It's kind of maybe a discussion for another day, but next qualifying matches aren't until May 13th, I believe, for Major 3. So we've got a little bit of a break here with like the All-Star weekend and the Pro-Am. But we went pretty long, so I don't know. We can maybe skip Down Bad Sportsman over the weekend, kind of wrap things up here if you're ready.
Yeah, I don't have much to be down bad about. We have MLB is starting this week.
US qualified for the World Cup.
Yeah, so we've got a lot to look forward to, and it's also the Masters week, so hard to be upset.
Yeah, and we got the College National Championship tonight for basketball, so that'll be fun as well. But that's going to do it for this one. Coming up here, we've obviously got a little bit of a interesting time here in the CDL season because, like we said, we got about a month break until the next qualifying matches for the major kick up. So, going to maybe be a little bit different style of content for the podcast than we're typically used to. But as the Challengers Pro-Am, gets a little closer, we'll be obviously doing analysis for that, predictions for that, reacting to those matches because that's basically just like another major. We'll also be doing a little bit of an interesting idea. I think maybe next week's podcast, since we won't have any matches to talk about or to predict, would potentially be an episode that we've been talking about. We might do a mid-season ranking of all the players in a tier list where they're currently at. So maybe be on the lookout for that potentially next week. Unless something crazy shakes out and we have to talk about something else. But that's going to do it for this one. We really appreciate you guys watching. The support in the last video was insane. The last podcast, I believe it was the most viewed podcast in the channel's history. So shout out to you guys for that crazy support. You can check us out on any audio platforms through Anchor. It'll be on Spotify or any platform you listen to audio podcasts on. If you enjoyed this one on YouTube, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We're chasing that 500 subscriber goal now. Seems like we just hit 400, but you guys have been showing crazy support. So we really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed watching the major. And we will see you guys again next week for potential midseason player power rankings, unless some crazy news comes out that we got to talk about. So that's going to do it for this one. We appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you in the next one.